Welcome. I'm glad you're here for another episode of the Vital Healing Podcast. My name is Keith Rowe, and I will be your host as we look at this week's Substack. Since this episode landed on Christmas Eve, I wanted to share something a little different today. Not a retelling of the familiar Christmas story, and not a lesson or teaching, but a story that many of us already know, and we've seen maybe from a different angle. This episode is centered around A Christmas Carol and the movie The Man Who Invented Christmas. It's about Charles Dickens and about Scrooge, and about what actually brings change in a human life. Not pressure or fear, but connection and love finding its way back in. You don't need to listen in any particular way. You can be walking or driving or maybe sitting quietly. Just let the story unfold and take whatever lands for you. So here's today's piece. Another Christmas story. Dickens, Scrooge, and the quiet return to love. Since we find ourselves on Christmas Eve, it felt like a good moment to pause and to look at a familiar story. Not the story of the Christ child or a retelling of the Nativity, but another Christmas story. It's one that tells us about love finding a way into the world and about compassion and generosity softening even the hardest hearts. There are a handful of Christmas movies that I try to return to each year. I think some of it is tradition and some of it comes from a love of nostalgia. For me, there's something grounding about watching a cartoon or a movie that has been part of my life for a long time. It becomes something that we've carried with us across many seasons. And I'm always amazed at how they can keep meeting us a little differently as we grow. One of the stories that I often watch each Christmas is Disney's Mickey's Christmas Carol. It's been part of my childhood Christmases and growing up, and so it's got a lot of nostalgia and remembering in it for me. I'm sure that many of you have seen it and remember that in its telling of the story, Donald Duck's Uncle Scrooge plays the part of the miser, and Mickey Mouse is left having to work on Christmas Eve just to make ends meet. As a child, I didn't analyze it or think much about where it came from. I simply enjoyed returning to it year after year. And then a few years ago, I came across another film centered on Dickens and the writing of A Christmas Carol. It is called The Man Who Invented Christmas. And this movie offers a way inside of the story. It gave me history and context and helped me see Charles Dickens differently, not as a distinct literary figure, but as a human being under real stress. And it also helped me see Scrooge differently. I was able to see past the cartoon miser and see someone shaped by fear and loss, a man who had grown hardened under the ongoing pressure of living in fear. Of course, The Man Who Invented Christmas is a work of fiction, and it takes liberties. It imagines conversations and compresses timelines in order to tell a compelling story. But when I spent a little time looking into the history behind it, I noticed how much of the emotional pressure portrayed in the film was grounded in real life. When Dickens sat down to write A Christmas Carol in 1843, He was not writing from a place of ease. His most recent book had failed, and money was tight. He was responsible for a growing family and had another child on the way. His publishers were skeptical, and Christmas itself was not the cultural centerpiece that it would later become. And at the same time, Dickens was carrying the weight of his own past. His father was sent to debtor's prison when Dickens was a boy, and that experience had marked his childhood, and it had forced him into factory work at a very young age. That early trauma reemerged during this period of his life, stirring old wounds around shame, responsibility, and survival. Those experiences with poverty and insecurity never fully left him, and they shaped the way that he saw the world. Seen through that lens, A Christmas Carol does not emerge from comfort or certainty. It emerges from a man trying to keep his footing, while a deeper truth about love seeks expression through his life and work. That context changed how I saw the story. Scrooge was no longer simply a villain or a moral device. He feels more human, someone who learned over time that staying closed felt safer than risking loss again. The story does not treat that hardness as something to be crushed or corrected. Scrooge is not redeemed through punishment or shame. He's not transformed by being scolded into goodness. He's changed by being loved and seen. His heart softens as he remembers what it is to be human, and love is allowed to flow back into his life after so long of being held at a distance. That is something the man who invented Christmas captures in its own way. As Dickens struggles with the character of Scrooge, he slowly comes to see that Scrooge cannot be forced into change. He has to be understood. He has to be given a way back into relationship and community. In both the story and the telling of how it came to be written, change does not come through force. It comes through reconnection. That feels worth sitting with, especially on Christmas Eve. The holidays can be beautiful, and they can ask a lot of us. Even good moments can stir old memories, grief, and quiet pressures. Many of us carry more than we realize, and we often carry it silently. One of the gifts of A Christmas Carol is the reminder that love does not wait for perfect conditions. It does not arrive only when everything is settled or healed. Sometimes it enters through small human moments of kindness and through the presence of someone like Tiny Tim, whose simple humanity softens what fear has hardened. Love often returns that way, not all at once, but gently, as we lean into our heart's calling and allow ourselves to be moved. Sometimes it's enough to pause and acknowledge that the holidays can hold many things at once: beauty and strain, joy and grief, memory in all its tenderness. And even within the complexity of our relationships, it can be enough to slow down and to breathe into what stirs inside of us, and to let love have a little more room. If you're looking for something gentle to watch this Christmas Eve, you might consider The Man Who Invented Christmas. It's not a replacement for your traditional stories or your favorite holiday films, but it can be a companion to them. A reminder that love often finds its way into the world through very human paths. I believe that's always been part of the Christmas story. It's not about perfection or performance. It is found in the quiet return to love and in creating a little more space for love in our hearts. I wish you a very Merry Christmas and a joyful New Year. Thank you for being on this journey. I pray that light and love accompany you on your way. As we come to the end of our time together today, I want to thank you for listening and for making space for this reflection. The holidays can stir a lot, memories and longing, joy and grief, and often complexity. And if this story touched something tender in you, I hope you'll let that tenderness be met with kindness rather than urgency. And as you move through the rest of this holiday season, my hope is that you find a grounding and you find moments of warmth and moments where love feels close and accessible, even if in small ways. Thank you again for being here and for walking this path with me. I'm wishing you all a gentle Christmas and a peaceful turning into the new year. As always, thank you for joining me on this vital healing journey. Until next time.